And at one point, one of the street vendors I was interviewing before told me, you should run now. So I started running.
Oh my gosh, Tibi.
And the guy was following me.
I'm here with the world's Tibisay Zea, who is our Latin America correspondent. She is based in Mexico City, but she has dropped by the studio today to talk with us about reporting, especially on gender in Mexico City. Tibi, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm happy to be here.
So I wanted to start with this. So Mexico elected its first female president last year, Claudia Sheinbaum. I know she is wildly popular. How big of a deal was it for Mexico to have its first female president?
It's a huge deal. You know, Mexico was able to achieve this milestone before any other North American country, ahead of Canada and the US. And it was a very intentional effort by the authorities, but also pushed by the feminist movement in Mexico to achieve more diversity in politics. And in 2024, Congress passed a law that mandates gender parity. And as a result of that, a lot of politicians in Mexico are now female. And this is a significant achievement for Mexico. It's a country where men have dominated politics. And the fact that now women and girls have this role model of a female president is
huge.
It's really huge for the country, yes.
But of course, equal representation, even equal representation in government does not always translate to changes on the ground for the experience of women when it comes to gender equality, when it comes to violence against women. I'm wondering if Mexico has seen any changes so far due to these changes in government, or if it's kind of too soon to say.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, gender-based violence is a huge problem in Mexico. And it doesn't have an easy fix. You know, the fact that there are more female politicians doesn't translate into systemic change. There are a lot of femicides happening in Mexico with complete impunity. In general, violent crime in Mexico, 90% of violent crime is either not reported or not investigated.
Wow.
And women face a lot of obstacles for reporting crimes. Police inaction, stigma to weak institutions. So it's going to take a while to really see if those types of changes will happen in the future, yeah.
So with that kind of context of Mexico, where Mexico is right now on women's rights and gender equality, I'm wondering what it is like for you as a woman and a journalist reporting in Mexico City. Mexico is also can be a dangerous place to be a journalist.
Yeah, it's actually one of the most dangerous places for journalists in the world. A lot of journalists are killed for investigating corruption, organized crime. And again, there is no justice. In many cases, journalists either decide not to report on certain things, which creates, you know, this problem of misinformation in general.
Yeah.
Or they have to be extremely careful because you can end up killed. You know, I try to be careful. I live in Mexico City that is way safer than other cities in the country.
Right.
Violence is usually happening in certain parts of the country, but there are cities that are better. The homicide rate in Mexico City is actually lower than in some cities in the US. So people tend to feel safer there.
Yeah.
Mérida in the state of Yucatan is one of the safest cities in North America. So violence, again, is not happening everywhere in the country, but you need to be careful.
I remember when you were heading to the Pacific coast to report on the eclipse a couple of years ago now. There was some scary stuff that went down. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes, I was going to Mazatlan to cover the total eclipse. I took a bus in Mexico City. It was a long trip, a 15-hour trip.
It was like the only way to get there at the time, because all the flights were sold out and stuff, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I'm usually good at sleeping in overnight buses, so I just decided to go by bus. And when I was about to board this bus, it was a legit company, and I went to the bus station, and the driver starts classifying people between Mexicans and foreigners. And the Mexicans were the first to board, and then the foreigners, we were waiting in a different line, and he told us that we needed to pay a special fee to be able to board the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand what was going on, and I didn't know anything about this fee. And I asked, like, what is this about? And he said, well, any bus that is going to the north of Mexico right now needs to do this. Foreigners need to pay a fee for organized crime, basically. He didn't say...
He didn't use those words, but he made it known to you that that's what it was. It was the shakedown from the cartels.
Yeah, so he wasn't charging personally this fee, but you had to show him the money.
That you had the money.
So he gave us 10 minutes to find $200. I didn't know what to do. I decided to do it because I asked some of my colleagues and, people that I knew in Mexico, and they said, don't mention that you're a journalist and just do what they want so you can be safe. I really wanted to understand what was going behind that, but then I realized, journalists who investigate these type of things can get killed. But that was sort of a reality check of how organized crime is in Mexico.
And that's an example of, how organized crime kind of permeates every part of life. It wasn't targeting you as a journalist specifically. Have there been instances where you have run into, some threats because of the work you do as a journalist specifically?
I remember one time that I was interviewing street vendors in Mexico City, and, they were selling all sorts of things, like from yoga pants to food to earbuds, anything you can imagine.
Like street market,
Right. And, because some of what they're doing is illegal, because you don't know where that...
those earbuds came from.
Right. They felt like they wanted to check with the boss. And
if they could talk to you.
If they could talk to me. So they called the boss, and then it was, this man that wasn't very happy about my presence there.
Yeah.
And he starts asking, what are you doing? And I explain, I'm just asking these people what they're doing. Some of them are immigrants, and I wanted to know, if they have any plans to leave the country after President Trump took power or anything. I'm not talking about what you're doing here, or where this came from. And also, this is anonymous. I don't need your names. But he didn't like it. And he started demanding that I give my recorder to him. And, it's an expensive recorder, but also I had a lot of tape on my SD card that was inserted, and it was going to be a huge loss for me. So I started to push back. I don't want to give you my record. I can delete this file, but I want to keep my recorder. He started to push hard, like, you have to give me that. And at one point, one of the street vendors I was interviewing before told me, you should run now. So I started running.
Oh my gosh, Tibi.
And the guy was following me.
Oh my God.
So I ran faster and faster, and I got lost somewhere, in a street market, a huge street market in downtown Mexico City. I generally feel safe in Mexico City, but when I have to travel to other states, I really try to research what's going on in that state. Is that safe? Do I have any colleagues working there? I try to reach out before I go so I can get more information about what the situation is like there before I go. And then I try not to mess with organized crime. These cartels control swaths of territory in Mexico. Sometimes it's better when a photographer comes with me, especially if it's a male photographer or a videographer.
Has your gender impacted at all the types of stories you do, or the places where you feel safe, or has that impacted how people interact with you as a journalist?
I think it made me realize how important it is to report on gender issues in Mexico, and I try to do that more often.
One of the amazing stories that you've been following is a story of disappeared people in Mexico. I think it's 100,000 people are still disappeared. And it is mothers who have really driven the charge to helping find and identify remains of disappeared people.
Yeah, so it's amazing how these incredible women have led efforts to find disappeared people in Mexico. And they have become investigators. They are skilled in forensic stuff. Many times they lead excavation.
Wow.
To sites. They get tips from anonymous sources saying there might be a mass grave in this area, this location. So they organize exploration to that point. Sometimes they have support from law enforcement, but many times they go by themselves.
Wow. And these are moms who are just, not experts, not archaeologists. They're just
mothers who are looking for their missing children.
Wow.
They are in this desperate situation where they feel like they have to do it because the state won't do it.
Yeah.
They have become a symbol of resilience, of creativity, and of this tragedy happening in Mexico.
We've talked about a lot of heavy stuff, including some hard stuff about reporting in Mexico, but I also know that you love living in Mexico City. You love reporting there. I've had the extreme pleasure of being able to visit and hang out with you a bit in Mexico City. I'm wondering what you love about telling stories in Mexico and Mexico City.
You just won't get bored there. There is a lot of museums, a lot of good restaurants, a lot of things happening in the city. It is a city that encourages you to be more curious. And also, I love the fact that I can get a perspective of what's happening in the U.S. from abroad.
Interesting.
And a lot of what's happening in the U.S. is affecting Mexicans right now. And I love that I have the possibility to learn from them about what they're thinking of the situation. Yeah.
And I feel like the sort of vibrancy that you're talking about in Mexico City comes out in your reporting. I'm wondering if you feel like this sense of discovery that you have as like a somewhat new resident there, and this vibrancy like fuels your interest in your storytelling.
Absolutely. Every day. I have a list of things that I want to do in Mexico City, and it keeps growing and growing. And, I am very intentional in meeting local people in various neighborhoods. They help me understand the country better and also come up with ideas from my reporting.
If you want to learn anything more about what our reporters do in the field, how they do it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have lots more behind-the-scenes conversations like this and more on our coverage all over the world. And if you have any questions for Tibi, you can pop them into the comments.